Hey everybody, Rich here with another PC Linux OS video, this time, as you can tell by the wallpaper, Phoenix Edition. Well, what's so different about this compared to KDE Mini-Me? Well, this one is using Xface desktop environment. If you're wondering, well, what is that? What does that mean, really? Well, what it means is this. I'll use Ubuntu as a quick example. Ubuntu by default uses the GNOME, which some people pronounce as GNOME desktop environment. The Xubuntu release, as in the one that starts with an X, that uses Xface, like Phoenix Edition PCLinuxOS does. They also have Kubuntu, starts with a K, that uses KDE, like the normal edition of PCLinuxOS does. To the best of my knowledge, PCLinuxOS does not have a GNOME version. They do have LXDE, they do have Xface, which is what you see here, and they have KDE, two versions, a mini version, and what they call the full Monty. I don't know if they have GNOME. I don't think they have a GNOME release of PCLinuxOS, and if they don't, that's fine, because it would just be weird, at least to me. Anyway, let's dive into this real quick. Let's concentrate on the desktop environment first before I get to the things like the icons and so on. You'll notice that there are two panels here, which I am not necessarily in agreement with, because I like interfaces, desktops that have just one panel. I don't really see the need for two. Fortunately, this is Linux we're talking about, so I could easily just right click and get rid of the panel if I wanted to and add what was down here up here. The desktops, workspaces, are in the second panel on the bottom, as is the trash can. And you do have to bear that in mind. This one here, I actually do appreciate this. They have a screenshot button by default right there. So if I hit that, there's your screenshot. I just think that's neat. It's a nice little touch that they have there. I do like the, this is the default desktop, the brushed aluminum, try to pronounce that again, the brushed aluminum, or aluminium, depending on what part of the world you're from. Looks very nice and proper and modern. Me being the big clock guy, clock must work, right? This works well in Xface, and you can customize it however you want, but it doesn't explain what this crap, I know what it is, but most people would not know, and I don't like that. But fortunately, one of these is probably what you wanted, so that's not a big schmeal. And you can change the font right from here. You can also change other things like date and then time. You'll notice that when I did that, now it's 2 rows. So if I did it by default, it is just time, like that. If I change it, watch up here, I'll do it again. Say date, actually, yeah, time then date, like a Windows 7 style. It's like this. I'll just leave it like that. You get the idea. When I went into here, though, the only thing I have a problem with is I cannot change my time zone from here, which I couldn't find a way to do it directly from here. I can get to the calendar really easily with a left click, but in order to do things like the time zone, I believe I would have to dive into the settings manager to do that, which I'll get to in a moment. Okay, so the icons up here, you've got basically everything you would want right out of the gate that you would actually need to get to. You've got your terminal, you've got a text editor, you've got a file manager, you've got the Synaptic package manager, which is for adding and removing programs. You have the control center, which requires authenticating. That's par for the course. You have, now this one is another minor complaint. This is the web browser icon, which is Firefox, but they use a generic icon here. You would never know this is Firefox by looking at a blue thing with a star or diamond, whatever that is in the middle. But this is Firefox, oops, try that again. This is Firefox 5. A compliment, which I will give right now, is that Flash is installed out of the gate, works perfect out of the gate, which is great. It's actually smoother than in the KDE version, which is also great. Great. Just awesome. Cool. Now, per the Xface environment, working with application Windows is a piece of cake. Now, I'll show some workspace examples here. If I want to take this terminal, I can right-click the title area, or I can just right click directly from here, move to Workspace 2. Now it is on Workspace 2. And if you watch this little thing down here and I move this, notice how it's changing down there, which is nice. Other Linux distributions do that, but a lot of people just aren't aware of it. That's why I show it. And if I want to move it back over to Workspace 1, I can actually do the same thing, right click here or right click down here. So I'll just do it from the title area this time, back to Workspace 1. Okay, now I'm back on Workspace 1. And if I have this other stuff, you'll notice that for windows that are in view on the desktop, it actually will show them, but if they are in a minimized state, it does not show them. That's always been kind of a complaint of mine about the Linux desktop environment, but that's just the way they do things, so what you gonna do? So let me close all this crap. Okay. Alright, so if the settings manager, pretty much like a standard control panel. This is stuff that you've seen before, not a big deal. There's really not much you have to modify here because everything looks like it should. The fonts are all correct. You don't have to mess with things like font smoothing. All of it looks proper. You don't have to mess with it. The only one you may have to mess with, actually I really can't think of one, because this is all good. Just this default environment. The PCLinuxOS team really got this environment right the first time. So I really can't say, oh, you'll have to go in and change this, because you really don't have to do that, which is cool. Now, as a final demonstration, just for average, everyday, somewhat, I guess, stuff you would do in Linux and why Xface kicks so much ass. First of all, because it's fast, but second of all, just because of the way the environment works. Now, I already have, this is a VMware session, and if I wanted to install VMware tools, it mounts a virtual CD, but I'll show just how that's done to show you how easy it is to work in Xface. So, now what you're seeing here is a Windows 7 menu, but I'm doing this just for sake of example. Okay, I just popped in a disk, and I open this, and you've got your tar gzip file, so I open that. It reads the archive down here. It takes a while because there's a lot of files in that archive. Okay, here is the folder I want to extract. Go back to my home folder, back here, click, drag. Extracts the archive, as you can see it doing right now. Should pop up a little dialog while it's doing, there it is, while it's doing it too. Okay, done. Close this. Now what I want to do is I want to launch a terminal that is directly inside this folder. And I also want it to have root access. In PCLinuxOS Phoenix, all this takes is 2 clicks. Right, left, open root terminal. Now, I love the fact that this is baked in by default. I don't have to do an su or a sudo or however that's called. All I have to do is left click, and it is in that folder. So I do an LSL, and there it is. So cd v star. Okay, and I can run my VMware like /vmware-install.pl. I'm not going to do it again because it's already installed here, but that is how easy it would be. When you're as a root terminal, it is the prompts are red and bold. If it were a regular terminal, it's actually white, and the other one is red. Now, for example, let's just say I'm going to do it the old school way, and I do want to activate root from within this. I do an su, and notice it turned red. So if I exit, it goes back to white. So I can go back and forth at whim. And when I'm done with this, I'll just right click and where's it moved to trash? Oh, just delete. Okay, delete. There it is. Now it's in the trash. I can right click and empty the trash from here, or alternatively go back down here, right click and empty the trash from there. Are you sure? Yes. And it's gone. I know, simple stuff, but that is how easy it is to work in this Xface in PCLinuxOS Phoenix Edition. Where would this be useful to you? Well, if you have already tried a KDE environment Linux and it just happens to tax your system too much, things are choppy, kind of doesn't work the way you want it to, you want something a little lighter, a little faster, you want Xface. And this PCLinuxOS Phoenix Edition with Xface is a damned fine choice. Also, if you want to dive into the world of virtual operating systems, let's just say you're running Windows or Mac, and you want to run a Linux inside, but you need it to be light, yet look modern, yet have all modern conveniences Linux brings. Again, run a Linux that uses XFace like PCLinuxOS. It's a good choice.